The State Department reportedly has not been helpful to many who have been trying to get out of Afghanistan. And I've been working on this with others on the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom, and have similar stories and accounts that I could give. Some have said that the State Department has even stood in the way as an obstacle for other individuals and nonprofits who have been trying to assist with evacuations. If that wasn't bad enough, it's now the State Department, that is trying to take credit for rescue operations that it had very little to do with. Senior State Department officials on Monday announced that the, quote, U.S. has facilitated the safe departure of 4 U.S. citizens by overland routes from Afghanistan, end quote. But was it the State Department? With me now to talk about this is Congressman Ronny Jackson. He serves on both the Armed Services Committee and the House Foreign Affairs Committee. He is also a retired Navy Rear Admiral who served for 25 years, including a stint in Iraq. He represents the 13th Congressional District of Texas. Congressman Jackson, welcome to the program.
Hey, thank you, Tony. I appreciate you having me.
Yes, sir. You were one who had alerted a private team of military veterans about the plight of a family of 4 that were just successfully evacuated. Can you tell us about how things unfolded and when and how the State Department stepped in?
Okay. Well, first off, let's just start with the fact that the State Department never stepped in, and I'll get to that in a minute. But Tony, these people were from my district. They are constituents of mine. They're from Amarillo, and so I found out early on, probably on Tuesday before the bombing on Thursday, that they were there and that they needed to get out. They were desperately trying to get out. So we immediately started engaging my team. I got my legislative team together. We started making phone calls to the State Department. We started calling everybody we could to figure out these people need to get out. They're U.S. citizens. They have blue passports. How do we get them out? And just so everybody knows, it was a mother and 3 children, okay? The oldest child was 15. The youngest was 2. And they're U.S. citizens. The father was still back home in Amarillo. They had gone over. They were from Afghanistan. The parents were, but were U.S. citizens, and the children were all born in the United States. But they had gone back over to see relatives and ended up just the timing was poor, and they got stuck there because of what happened. Because they, like everybody else in the world, didn't know that that Biden was just going to yank everybody out of Afghanistan, yank all the troops out, let the Taliban take over the entire country in a matter of hours, and then they were going to be stranded there. But that's exactly what happened. So they were there trying to visit families. They realized, as soon as this started happening, they had to get out of there very quickly because obviously the Taliban is very hostile and will continue to be hostile, and will get much more hostile as the days go on towards American citizens and those people that helped the U.S. In the last 20 years. So they started scrambling, trying to get out of there. We started making phone calls. We got the State Department engaged. The State Department just basically, initially, they were doing the same thing for everybody. They weren't being helpful at all. They were sending out text messages, and they were telling people, text your information to this particular, text your information to this particular, I'm sorry, I got to turn this off. To this particular address here, and tell us where you're at and what's going on, so on and so forth. Or call this hotline, and we'll see if we can help you. It was just your typical bureaucratic, just garbage that was not useful at all. And these people were extremists, and so they started going to a couple of times. The State Department said go to the South Gate. And so they would go to the South Gate, and they would get stopped by the Taliban at the checkpoint. The Taliban would threaten them. The Taliban beat up one of the uncles. The Taliban struck the 15-year-old son. They eventually stuck a gun to the mother's head and told her that if she came back, they would shoot her in the head. They didn't care who she was or what kind of passport she had. She wasn't passing through. And then so at one point, they actually got through, and they were 200 feet from the gate, and we could not get the State Department to open the gate and let them in. This was the kind of stuff that was happening. They were right there. So the State Department was making a lot of noise saying they were trying to be helpful to U.S. citizens, but they were actually doing nothing to help them. And they were preventing the military as well, but this is a big part of the problem, is that this military operation was being run by the State Department. They were preventing the State Department was preventing the military from going out and getting these people and bringing them back in. So they were kind of stuck. They really had no options. And they just kept this up until the very end, until the State Department finally pulled everybody out, the military pulled everybody out, and they were gone, and there were no options left for them. At that point, they realized that they were on a hit list. the Taliban had gone to their home looking for them. At that point, it was no longer safe for them to go. Now, mind you, I had a team led by Corey Mills, who used to do a lot of contracting over there, military contracting. He had a lot of contractors on the ground over there. There were Afghans that were helping us. There were SIV applicants, and they were hoping to get out as well. They were still part of Corey's team. Corey went over there with Mark Wayne Mullen, and they were going to try to fly in and go out into Kabul, gather these people up, bring them back to a plane that Corey had already had donors paid for. Corey had cash. He had the plane paid for. Everything was done. They had tactical vehicles there, weapons, everything they needed. They were going to go get these people, bring them back to the airport, and get them out of there. But what happened is the State Department would not let Corey in. They would not. They refused to let his plane land. They refused to give him any assistance whatsoever. So Corey was moving this family around in Kabul to safe houses to keep them from being killed. And eventually what happened, I hear some music playing, so we might be tying it up here, but they eventually fled to another part of the country, to the border, and they got there, and there were planes that were manifested that Corey had worked out. They were on the manifest, they were ready to go, and the State Department would not give the permission for these planes to land in third-party countries so that they could get them out of there. In addition, the Taliban was also prevented because the Taliban was already holding them hostage, essentially, and using them to barter and bargain for recognition
Congressman,
of the government.
we're up against
the border.
We're up against the break. Can you stick around for another couple of minutes? I want you to finish that on the other side of the break.
Okay, yep.
Can you stick with us? Okay. All right, the Congressman's going to stick with us, and Dr. Ronnie Floyd's going to be joining us as well. So don't go away. We're coming back with more Washington Watch after this. Joining me, Congressman Ronny Jackson of Texas. He's a member of the House Armed Services Committee and the House Foreign Affairs Committee. He is retired from the United States Navy, retired as a Rear Admiral. And he was talking about his efforts to get a family out from his district that was in Afghanistan and how the State Department was not helpful. Congressman Jackson, thanks for sticking around through the break. I wanted you to finish this account because I have another question for you. So there was an effort to try to get them out of one of the other airports. They could not get the help from the State Department. So what happened?
So that's right. So they went up north because they basically, their life was really becoming increasingly, in danger staying in Kabul. So they got out of Kabul, and they knew they weren't getting out of Kabul anyways because we had abandoned the airport there. So there was an airport up north that was supposed to be an airport where potentially they could get out of still. So they made the long trek, the long dangerous trek, 8 to 10 hours to drop up to the airport up north. And they actually got there. There was a plane there. There were 6 planes on the ground. They were all there. Donors had donated. They were designated as humanitarian flights, and they were there specifically to get American citizens and SIV holders out. They were ready. They were fueled. They had crews. My particular constituents, my team was so aggressive. They had them manifested on all 6 of the planes, just in case one took off and the other one didn't. We wanted to make sure they were on the manifest that left. They were manifested. They went to the airport 3 days in a row. And 3 days in a row, they were told by the Taliban that the plane wasn't leaving to come back the next day. My team on the ground would pull them out, put them back in a safe house overnight, and then take them back to the airport the next day. The third day, some of the people that left didn't come back to the airport. They disappeared. And so it was obvious that the Taliban had probably taken these people. So it was getting very dangerous for them. That third day, they sit there. They were 20 minutes from boarding. 20 minutes from their boarding time. The plane was ready to go, and they were told by the Taliban that they could not leave. We made phone calls to the State Department. The State Department told us, we don't know what's going on there. We don't have any oversight from that. All we've been told is that the Taliban won't let these people leave until their government is fully established and recognized. And that might not happen until the 9th of September. Basically, these people are being held hostage at this point by the Taliban, and the Taliban's demand is that their government be set up and be recognized. And they're going to push the U.S. government to recognize them, a group of terrorists, as the official government for Afghanistan before they let our people go. Mark my word, that is going to happen. That has essentially already happened. So my team said this is too dangerous. We are going to pull them out. We are not going to try to fly them out anymore. We are going to go and we're going to find a place on the border where they can cross. So Corey Mills, who was on the other side, went up and down the border to find areas. He talked to Taliban guards. He bribed some of them. He tricked some of them into thinking that they were being contacted by Taliban people in Doha, He pulled every trick in the hat he could out. He finally got these people across the border. When they got across the border, they needed an emergency visa from the country that they went into. And so the State Department, after they were already crossed the border, did provide that. That was the only thing the State Department did. But up until that point, when these people were already out, the State Department had essentially no role in getting them out. Then the horrible thing is that the State Department turned around. These were the first 4 Americans to leave the country after the 31st of August when the Americans pulled out of Kabul. The State Department immediately seized on this, and they started pushing out to CNN and all the other news agencies that they had just got the first 4 Americans out over a land bridge, and that this was proof that they had a plan in place to get Americans out. They did not have a plan in place. They had nothing to do with this, and they were taking it and making it their own and basically trying to lie to the American people and tell the American people that this was their plan and this was how they were going to get Americans out. It's shameful. It's absolutely shameful. And then we found out later on that the entire time, one of the reasons these planes couldn't leave, in addition to the Taliban not letting them go, is because the American government, the State Department, was going around to these third-party countries and encouraging them not to let these people land there. And they would not give authorization for these flights to land in that area. And these countries won't let these people land with American citizens on board unless our State Department has okayed it. And our State Department said, we will not okay that, essentially shutting it down. So the State Department was pushing back at every level. I don't know why. I think that part of it is they didn't want the success story from Afghanistan to be that patriotic American citizens were going over there and getting our people out of there, doing something that the State Department and the military couldn't or wouldn't do. I think they thought that was a bad story, and they would rather leave those people there than have that story. I think it's just absolutely horrible, Tony.
Congressman, I can't agree with you more. I've been working with others trying to find those countries that would allow these plans to land and these refugees to be processed through. And you're absolutely right. There's a obstacle at every turn. And as we speak, those planes, they're still on the ground?
They're still on the ground as far as I know. They have not left. As far as I know, no other citizens have got out of Afghanistan since the 31st of August, other than the 4 citizens from the 13th Congressional District that we got out by sneaking them across the border, essentially.
Well, Congressman, I want to thank you for your tenacity. I want to thank you, obviously, for joining us today, but thank you for your service to our country and for upholding what I was talking about earlier with Chad Robichaux, what is our heritage and really the history that we don't leave Americans behind, at least not until what we're seeing unfold today. Congressman, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Tony. I appreciate it.